Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have RS 2559, and this is the Passenger Rail Service Program, establishing a revolving fund. And it will probably end up in Ways and Means, but I wanted to introduce it here because we talk about the rail service here as well.
Committee, any objections? Seeing none, that's introduced. Any other bill introductions from the audience? Seeing none, we're honored today to have Secretary Reed here to give us KDOT 101. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. It is an honor to be here today and talk to you about, give you an update on what's going on at KDOT with the IKE transportation program, and to give you a little bit of insight about what we see for the second half of the program and then beyond. So for those that don't know, Calvin Reed, I am Secretary of Transportation, and I am honored to be here on behalf of the 2,200 plus dedicated employees at KDOT, the folks that do all the things, the folks that are going to be out this weekend with the big winter storm coming. Those are the folks that are going to be clearing the roads and making sure that people get where they need to get as safely as possible. Like I said, today I'm going to provide an update on the progress of the first half of our 10-year comprehensive Eisenhower Legacy Transportation Program. I'm going to call it IKE from here on out, and discuss the second half of the program and provide some insight into issues ongoing and emerging that we see. We continue to value the legislature as a partner in the progress that has been achieved and the solutions that are yet to come. Before I get into that, I would like to start with one of the top priorities for me personally and a focus for the agency over the past 5 years. While we saw an increase in traffic fatalities from 2024 to 2025, we've been on a downward trend over the past 5 years. Obviously, the 361 fatalities that we saw last year are still too many, but the overall downward trend is positive. Traffic fatalities are an issue on both state highways and local roads. As you can see on this graphic, nearly 50% of traffic fatalities since 2020 have been on our locally owned roads. KDOT continues to work with our locals with programs targeted to address intersections, railway and highway grade crossings, urban roads, and rural roads. And it will continue to be a priority to keep this trend going down for 2026 and beyond. There will be some key safety legislation this session, and we would be happy to discuss these more with you as appropriate. So I said we've reached the halfway point in the IKE program, and we are proud of what we've been able to accomplish to date. We have been able to deliver meaningful progress across the state thanks to the support and investment you all have made by passing the IKE program in 2020. We've improved more than 9,500 highway miles and 575 bridges in that time. We've also been able to support investment at the local level through programs like cost share and economic development, an investment in the many modes that make up our overall transportation system. Like aviation, local airports have been able to upgrade infrastructure to accommodate larger aircraft, repair runways, and upgrade weather and fuel stations with KDOT funding. As a reminder, the legislation was passed a couple of years ago to increase the statutory amount of state funding dedicated to airports from $5 million annually to $15 million annually. For our rail, short-line rail upgrades are intended to enhance safety, promote economic efficiency, and improve sustainability. State funding is dedicated at $10 million annually available for short-line rail operators and businesses that connect to those short-line rails. For bike and pedestrian facilities, our Transportation Alternatives program supports safer, more walkable, and bike-friendly routes to increase accessibility and mobility within communities. The funding is primarily federal money passed through to local communities. And then finally, public transportation, supporting the operations, administration, and capital projects, public transportation funds support Kansas agencies providing transportation access to seniors, individuals with disabilities, and the general traveling public. This funding, again, is primarily federal transit money passed through KDOT to local agencies. This is probably a familiar slide to many of you. We have communicated this slide consistently over the past 5 years. The priorities shown by this graphic, the priorities of the Kelly administration and you, the legislature, are still relevant at the midpoint of the program. And those priorities are taking care of what we have. Over half of the program was estimated to go towards highway preservation. IKE was built to restore our system health and protect our investment into the future, and to strategically modernize and expand our system. Nearly 1/4 of the program was dedicated for modernization and expansion projects. To provide opportunities to our local partners through programs like Cost Share and our local bridge improvement program. And finally, to allow Kansans to have options in how they move by investing appropriately in the non-highway modes. As we have collected data on our first 5 years of revenues and costs, we have a clearer picture now of what the end of the program will look like. And I will spend the next few slides providing that update. Overall, revenues coming into the program are about 20% more than what we estimated they would be in 2020. The biggest gains are in sales tax and federal fund reimbursements, which together make over 60% of revenues into the State Highway Fund since 2020. Motor fuels tax collections have been flat for the past 5 years, and actually relatively flat since 2003, the last time the motor fuels tax rate was adjusted. As I reported last fall to the Special Committee on Taxation, usage of our system continues to increase steadily. However, those increases are offset by increases in fuel economy, especially in passenger vehicles. Looking towards the last 5 years of the program, we are projecting steady but slower gains in sales tax revenue and continued level motor fuels tax revenues. As the current Federal Surface Transportation Authorization, or IIJA, comes to an end in September of this year, we know that federal reimbursement will be heavily impacted by priorities in the next surface transportation reauthorization. Unfortunately, we've not been able to realize the gains in revenue over the first 5 years, as inflation in construction prices has outpaced. Over the first 4 years of the program, we saw double-digit annual inflation hit the highway construction industry. Finally, in 2025, we saw construction prices level off. However, we do not expect to see major price decreases moving forward. The result, prices in 2025 are about 66% higher than they were in 2021. A project that would have cost $1 million in 2021 would now cost us about $1.66 million. These price increases have impacted how much we have been able to deliver with the constrained revenues that we have available to us. Now, at the midpoint of the program, with the data from the first 5 years and better projections into the second half, we have a clearer picture of the new IKE program estimate. As you can see, we are projecting the overall program spending to be about $11.5 billion, which is about 16% higher than what we had originally projected. We are still aligning with the original priorities by first and foremost taking care of the system through preservation. Meanwhile, taking advantage of opportunities made available in IIJA to support the vast needs with our locally owned bridges. I want to be clear, though. We expect to spend more than we originally estimated, but because of the surge of inflation, we will likely be delivering less than what we had originally planned. For this reason, it is even more important to make sure the projects that we construct are the highest priority projects to the people that use them every day. In 2025, KDOT met with over 1,000 Kansans through our biannual local consult meetings. We held these meetings at 8 sites around the state and 1 virtual meeting. As in past meetings, this was an opportunity for KDOT to listen and receive feedback as we look to finish the IKE program strong. Kansans continue to remind us of the importance of transportation in their daily lives. A big part of these meetings is gaining insight and information to help us prioritize the very expensive projects that modernize and expand our highway system. This should be a familiar graphic to many of you, our way of explaining the rolling nature of the IKE program. Projects progress through IKE in our pipelines. Projects are selected based on engineering needs and local feedback to go into our development pipeline. In the development pipeline, important information is gained through planning, engineering, and public engagement. When projects are developed enough that we have a clear understanding of scope, cost, and schedule, the project is, and we have identified funding, and we know that the communities still support that project can then move into our construction pipeline. And as projects are selected into the construction pipeline, it leaves a gap in our development pipeline that we can backfill through our local consult process, thus the rolling nature of the program. IKE is the first Kansas transportation program that has operated in this rolling nature. And while the previous slide shows how the rolling program works theoretically, we can now show how this process works in reality. In 2025, we saw some of the earliest projects selected into the pipelines get finished and open to traffic, while construction started on many others, like the Polk Quincy Viaduct here in Topeka. We heard clearly in 2019 and 2021 from the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, and other local entities of the importance of this project to the region, and then we selected it for the development pipeline in 2021. The city was able to secure a local contribution for the project of over $20 million, and Polk Quincy was selected for the IKE construction pipeline in 2023. The project was let to construction in December of 2024 and is now under active construction. If you've driven around downtown Topeka, you have seen the active construction. And it is expected to be complete in 2027. This process is not always fast. It's not as fast as I would like, it's not as fast as many of our communities like, but it is the way the process needs to go. And it allows us to make prudent financial investments, responding to emerging needs and conditions, and work with the stakeholders all along the way. This rolling program approach has been beneficial to our state. And unlike the beginning of the program, today we have healthy pipelines of projects being delivered. We've completed more than $107 million of modernization and expansion projects under IKE and have $1.6 billion under active construction right now. We have another $1 billion of projects that we have committed to construct and will have constructed by the end of the program. We also have about $2.8 billion worth of projects in our development pipeline. And we continue to deliver these in all regions of the state, as this graphic shows. The IKE legislation included minimum investment requirements for each region of the state, and I'm happy to report that we are on track to deliver those minimum investments all across the state. The largest project in the program and the largest project that KDOT has ever awarded is the US 69 Express project in Overland Park. At $570 million, this design-build project will convert the busiest 4-lane highway in Kansas into a 6-lane, adding capacity with the first ever express toll lanes in our state. I am happy to report that construction is nearly complete on this project. The tolling contractor is currently performing final testing to the tolling equipment, and we anticipate opening in February. I want to thank our KDOT team, the contractor, our partners at the Kansas Turnpike Authority, and everyone for all their hard work on this project, because delivering it ahead of schedule and on budget has been quite a feat. And it was a priority when Ike was passed that every Kansan should benefit from the investments in this program. That is why we have our $8 million promise, a promise that at least $8 million of investment would happen in each of Kansas's 105 counties during the program. To date, we have met that $8 million promise in 101 out of 105 of our counties. We are on track. We will meet that goal. We will likely meet that goal this year of $8 million in every county. But $8 million now is not the same as $8 million was in 2020. So it is my commitment that every county will end up with significantly more than $8 million invested by the end of the program. All right, so that was a quick look at the progress that we have been able to make over the first 5 years of the program. I'm sure you have many questions, and I'd love to answer them. But before we get to that, I would like to give you a look ahead at some things on the horizon. I want to start with the state of our locally owned system. The fiscal challenges that we are seeing at KDOT are also being felt by our cities and counties as they maintain their roads and streets. As a reminder, the majority of our public roads and highways are owned by our cities and especially our counties. But as you can see, the amount of traffic carried on our roads, on our county roads, is relatively small. And going back to my first slide about highway fatalities, nearly 50% of them are on our local system. In many ways, our local partners have even greater challenges than us. As motor fuel tax revenues have stagnated, so has their share through the Special City and County Highway Fund, forcing them to look for other ways to fund the needs of their transportation system. And to remind you that the funding challenge is not the same for every county. Shown is the data for locally owned bridges. Jewell County in north central Kansas, the darkest color on this map, Jewell County has one locally owned bridge for every 10 people in the county. That is why our local bridge improvement program is so significant. Not only does it address bridge needs, but it also provides incentives to counties to remove bridges that may not be necessary. This helps counties prioritize, but also reduce long-term burden to their citizens. I showed you the inflation trend earlier, and as you can see it again on this slide in gold. These numbers are indexed to construction costs in 2003. Compared to the trend in motor fuels tax revenue, which is shown in blue, also indexed back to 2003. Putting this all together, the real purchasing power of motor fuels tax is about 1/3 of what it was in 2003. Or in real terms, in 2025, a county can replace one bridge with the same funding that they would have replaced 3 bridges with in 2003. The needs are there, the needs are real, and a funding gap has emerged. So at KDOT, we've had opportunities with our local partners to help fill the gap and address some of these transportation needs. Under Ike, our cost share program has awarded 146 projects in 76 counties, representing a state investment of $95 million. Our local bridge programs have awarded projects to replace or rehabilitate more than 200 bridges in poor condition. And through our economic development program, we've awarded more than 40 projects, a total of $103 million, to help communities that are bringing jobs and capital investment into Kansas. Also, the infrastructure hub continues to play a huge role in helping fill this gap as we continue to work with communities to bring more federal dollars to Kansas. I think there's a larger conversation to be had about how the state can work with communities to meet our long-term infrastructure needs. I'd be happy to come back and visit more about that at your leisure. I showed earlier that federal funding makes up about 1/4 of our revenue into the State Highway Fund. So we are watching the discussions on the next federal surface transportation authorization very closely. As a reminder, the current federal transportation authorization expires in September of this year. To continue to receive federal funds, either the current authorization will need to be extended or a new authorization will need to be passed. Congress is actively working to put together the next reauthorization, and KDOT, along with other DOTs, have been an active voice about priorities. Our priorities include, first, continuing to have a designated funding specifically for bridges, and second, prioritizing formula funds over discretionary grants. With formula funds, we are better able to plan and more quickly turn the funding into real construction. And finally, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention a few notable and exciting things ahead for the state of Kansas. The summer's World Cup matches in Kansas City will bring hundreds of thousands of people to the region. KDOT has been actively engaged with KC 2026 Transportation Working Group. We've committed to sprucing up the right-of-way in the metro and limiting construction lane closures over the summer. At the same time as the World Cup, many will be celebrating the 100-year anniversary of Route 66. We expect lots of tourists on the 13-mile stretch of Route 66 in the southeast corner of our state. And the KC Chiefs are coming to Kansas. We know there will be transportation impacts, and we're ready to partner with the state, other state agencies, and local officials to help support the new and exciting development. We see all these opportunities to showcase Kansas, and we see all of these as opportunities to showcase Kansas and all we have to offer. The ability to move safely and efficiently, whether by highway, by bike, by plane, by bus, is a big part of that. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my remarks. I'd be open to any questions you might have.
Before we start with questions, what's that lapel pin you have on?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for asking that question. This is actually probably one of the first presentations I've given to this committee that I have not mentioned this. This is my buckle up, phone down pin. The two things that every single one of us can do and we can advocate for when we get in a vehicle. Two of the biggest things we can do to help drive that fatality number down is to buckle up and phone down every time. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. I didn't want you to break your record. Start off with Senator Cleave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Calvin, for this presentation. Just curious, so you were talking about the inflation rate. You have here 10.6 average. And then with the adjustments you've made based off of that, like one bridge you're saying can be built now compared to 3 in 2021. That seems high. I mean, did you get that rate a while back, or do you anticipate that shifting to where you can get back on track on your projects, or speak to that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Senator. I am going to clarify. When I was talking about one bridge versus 3 bridges, I'm comparing 2025 to 2003. So if you go all the way back to the beginning of that chart, where prices are right now about 3.17 times higher than they were in 2003. So we're comparing back to the last date that motor fuels tax rates were adjusted in Kansas.
Okay, and one follow-up. So on that motor fuel tax, that's been pretty flat for quite a long time. How are you projecting out from that? What do you see from there?
Thank you for the question. As I said, we are projecting it to continue to be flat. We expect the trends that have been consistent over the last 20 years of slight increases in the number of vehicle miles traveled on our system, that will continue on. We don't expect to see anything different, especially not in the relatively near term. We also expect to see continued increases in fuel efficiency. And just like for the last 20 years, we expect those to offset each other. I think there have been some meaningful legislation passed, especially last year, looking at EVs and hybrid electric vehicles and how they are impacting our motor fuels tax that we are collecting, and the fact that we are adjusting revenues on those vehicles to provide parity for all people driving on the system. I think that was a meaningful step in helping to balance that out. But in terms of pure motor fuels tax, we expect it to remain relatively flat, unless, of course, the rate is adjusted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joe Clays from Wichita area. Look, I want to raise something that might seem like just a minor aesthetic preference, but I think the evidence shows it's actually quite a bit more than that. You know, when we build a bridge that looks like a concrete silo versus one with maybe a stamped brick or, you know, some other visual consideration, we're not just making a design choice. I mean, we're sending a signal to people. Here's the interesting part. The research actually supports that it's actually getting received and acted on. There have been Dutch experiments that were published in Science, which isn't, you know, an obscure journal, that shows that, when you create an environment that has a lot of graffiti and neglect, littering rates nearly doubled. And when you flip that around, you know, what happens when infrastructure looks like someone actually gives a damn, you know, the opposite effect. People treat it better. They're less likely to vandalize it. And we have real data, not just from, you know, the Dutch, which were evidently, fighting with over Greenland, or maybe that's the Danes, I guess. But nonetheless, Flint, Michigan, not exactly a wealthy community, they started maintaining vacant lots, and they found that violent crime went down 40% in those areas. Dayton also redesigned some troubled neighborhoods, and again, cut in violent crime. And I look at Wichita, and we have, you know, this enormous bridge, you know, that cuts the city in half, and it's just blight underneath that thing because of it. And I know this has nothing to do with you. In fact, I'm incredibly impressed with what you've done, because when I drive, you know, just out here in Topeka and see the bridges, they're using that stamped brick. And also, I've noticed that you're giving us a lot more room to kind of slow down and, you know, get an off ramp. I mean, because sometimes you'll be in a situation where you have to hit your brakes because that car had to hit its brakes just to get off the highway. And that, of course, it's the change in speed that creates accidents. So I wanted to just think you guys are doing a great job. I know it's under a lot of spending issues where we maybe aren't prioritizing this like we should, but I hope you keep up with that, because I think it matters. And I think if you amortize it over the fact that, you know, these are things that are built much like this building, you know, hundreds of years old. When you have something that sits there for 50 years, I mean, the cost of the stamped brick over that time can't be that much. I mean, what are we talking about, a coffee a month or something? So anyway, it's an axe I grind. I think it really matters. I think people overlook it. I saw I remember when we did Kellogg, people were complaining because they'd actually put some Aristotle quotes, you know, time is motion. I love when I drive under that and see time is motion. Now, obviously, current physicists might take issue with that, but, nonetheless, as a terrestrial being, time is motion from our point of view. Nonetheless, I love that stuff. I hope you keep doing it, regardless of the budget issues. I think that cutting that would be a huge mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary. So just a little plug, really enjoyed the local consult. That was a robust conversation and I think adds value, so thank you for that. The question I would have was, you mentioned some of the excess funds or the increase in funding for this year. Some of that came through federal funds. Are we able to allocate that to helping stem the increases due to inflation to keep those additional projects going, or do those funds have to be separated?
Thank you, Senator. I'll try to answer this question as best I can. With the federal funds, there are certain pots of money, and those pots of money have rules on what we can spend those on. But it is a finite amount, right? It is a defined amount. It is appropriated through Congress, those formula funds. How we spend that, we have some pots with a lot of flexibility that we can use to spend on different things. Some, we have a lot less flexibility. So what I would say is I'm very proud of our team who's been doing this for years. Their number one priority is make sure that every single federal dollar that we have available to us gets invested in Kansas. So that's our number one priority. And then we use that to be as flexible as we can to make sure that we're accomplishing whatever we need to accomplish in the program.
Thank you. One follow-up, Mr. Chair. So thank you. And in regards to the improvements on 69, have you run any projections on what type of revenue that may bring in over time and what that may look like? And if you don't have that answer today, I wouldn't mind following up with what that could look like on some modeling on that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, we have ran projections. I would say, just like any estimate, it's going to be wrong. Which way it's going to be wrong, we don't know yet. We'd be happy to share with you what, and with the entire committee, what our projections are for annual revenues on that route.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that the issue that I would suspect you hear a lot, because I know I hear it a lot, is trying to four-lane as much highway as possible, particularly in western Kansas and southeast Kansas. Can you just talk about kind of how KDOT is looking at that, some of the progress you've made, what your thinking is around that? Because that's just whenever I travel the state, it's just a huge desire I hear from people about, we've got a lot of two-lane highways, really, a lot of times no shoulders, very poor lighting, and just an immense desire among folks out there to try to see that four-laned and better lit with shoulders. Can you just talk about that?
Yeah, Senator, I really appreciate that question. We have almost infinite needs out there that we are trying to address at any given point in time. Obviously, a finite resource to be able to address those needs in both finances and manpower. So we have a way to prioritize that. I discussed a little bit about our local consult process. Those discussions about converting a two-lane into a four-lane, or maybe even better in some cases, a two-lane into a two-lane with passing lanes. Those are discussions that we have at our local consult meetings. We bring that information back as part of our process for prioritizing projects. And then we go out and meet with folks during project development phases to make sure that we are answering all the questions, make sure that we understand what the real concerns, what the real needs are. Now, your global question about four-laning highways, whether it's in western Kansas or southeast Kansas, or even in our metro areas, it is a big discussion. It is a big cost, not just for now, but well into the future. You think about all of those additional lanes that you are adding are future maintenance. That's future, I'll say, burden that you are putting onto generations ahead of us. So we need to make sure that those are wise decisions, that the value, the benefit gained from those kind of decisions actually meets what the cost is going to be. Those are hard conversations, difficult conversations. I think what we have been successful at is looking at things like passing lanes and other innovations to help address those immediate concerns as we develop long-term plans to things like four-laning highways.
That's really helpful and very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary Reed, and your staff. Appreciate the work that you do. Agriculture, our number one industry, and generally speaking, those good people are pretty quiet. They want us to stay out of their business, respectfully so. My question is, on your local meetings, did you feel like you had a good inputs from our ag industry on our transportation infrastructure?
Yeah, thank you. And I really appreciate that question. I think I grew up on a farm, grew up around the ag industry. My dad, my father-in-law, still farmers, so I get to hear those voices on a pretty routine basis. I would say hit or miss, right? So I would say some regions we had good representation from globally the ag industry. I had some really good conversations with individual farmers out in Northwest Kansas. I think we had some of our bigger farmers out there also kind of representing what their concerns were, but not universal across the state. I think that is one thing we can do better, is to try to get the message out and invite people to these meetings and really let them understand we really want to listen to them. We want to hear their concerns. Does that mean we're going to solve every problem? No. But we don't know it's a problem to solve unless we hear from them.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate that, and if there's ways we can help to engage that voice with the amount of trucks and the needs of our agriculture industry, that voice needs to be heard, and if we can help, I would be interested in that conversation.
We appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Byers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nice job, Calvin, as always. I like your pictures in the testimony, too. I would be amiss if I didn't tell you how, so I have 14 counties, a lot of road questions, dangerous intersections and such, and your department and Joel and Catherine work so well with me on trying to solve these problems with the community. So I just want to let you know how much I appreciate that as a senator, and will continue to send on those ideas and requests of with folks from home and your attention to those projects that need to be looked at.
Senator, if
So
you don't mind.
thank you.
We appreciate your partnership too, and we appreciate you bringing those forward. Like I said, we don't know if it's a problem. We don't know it's a problem until we get told sometimes. So you communicating those issues to us helps us solve. And obviously, we want to make sure our customers are satisfied with the product that they're driving on every day.
One more thing, Chair. I did want to tell you also I appreciated the local consults and how you engaged with my people from home, and some of mine in north central Kansas rose to the top. So we all agreed on that. And if you remember in the western part, I'm very proud of Osborne County coming in with their 281 yellow shirts that they gave me one, by the way. That was so impressive of what they did and how much they appreciate that project moving forward. So I want to say that as well. And if I might say, Mr. Chair, we had some Farm Bureau folks from home in the room, if they can just wave. So thanks for coming and listening to us too. Thank you, Calvin.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So wearing colorful T-shirts with highway names is how you get the attention. Okay, I'll remember that. Thank you, Secretary Reed, for being here. And I kind of want to echo what Senator Bauer said. Your staff is always so very responsive, as are you, whenever we have a question. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm asking. I just know that I had a phone call. This is the issue. What do I do about it? In particular, junkyards. Remember that one? Okay.
You remember that?
Yeah, do you know that they take care of junkyards too? So on to my real question. It seems like a few years ago, maybe right after COVID, there were some issues with finding enough subcontractors to be able to complete the projects on time. Have you found that to have been alleviated now? Are your timelines moving forward? You've got plenty of subcontractors willing to bid?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. I would say right now we are getting competitive bids. Several years ago, we had several projects come through where in some months where would have several projects that got 0 bids or 1 bid. And obviously, 0 bids is a challenge. 1 bid is also a challenge because it's hard to justify that is a competitive bid. So we need 2 or more often to be able to call it a competitive bid. We have been able to get those competitive bids, and I think I could speak to that is the stability of the industry right now, the fact that we are continually putting work out there, that they see that, they can plan for that, they can staff up for that. That has helped them plan their businesses as well. I think continuing that is going to be important to helping build up a strong contracting industry. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your presentation. And the express lanes on 69 Highway are a large portion through the district that I represent. So the department has been very instrumental and cooperative in addressing a lot of the concerns of residents as the construction began. I think there were some concerns about construction at night, and so I think some schedules were changed, and the listening I appreciate on behalf of the department, because that has been a massive project. It seems to have been going speedily along, to use a transportation term, right? And I think it's getting pretty close. I didn't catch that earlier, but getting pretty close to being open pretty soon. So thank you for always listening to the concerns of communities as they reach out. I mean, they've got to live where these roads are, and if we don't have good roads, we can't get our products to market, we can't get to work. So it's very noticeable, the quality of roads we have here in Kansas. And so I guess this is just a thank you for how you've been able to. It's not always possible, right? I mean, construction is what it is, and it causes delays and backups, but I think that throughout the process, it's been, some accommodations have been made where they can. So I wanted to thank the department for that.
Appreciate that comment, just because you weren't here. So we're doing final testing right now on the tolling infrastructure. So if you drive down the corridor, it probably looks like it's ready to go. It is almost ready to go. We expect it to be open up in February.
Okay, great. And I think just then the signs need to come on because the pavement, I mean, it looks good and looks ready for some traffic in those lanes. But thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to build on Senator Dietrich's question in regards to contractors. In regards to local bridges, I assume your team would have their hands in all construction of bridges, or is that or does some of that fall to the county and local where you wouldn't be involved in that? Because one of the comments that came from our county commissioner recently was they received one bid back, and it felt like they were the question would be, do you provide your list of contractors to the locals, or are you involved in those conversations anyway?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a complicated question to answer. Very simply, sometimes we actually let those projects on behalf of the counties, and sometimes they do it on their own. And a lot of it is determined based on where the funding is coming for that. If they are self-funding that, then they probably let it on their own. We do have a list of pre-qualified contractors that they can make use of if they choose to.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone have a final question? Senator Bowers.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We haven't really talked about K-tags, but Senator Warren's comment. I love K-tags, and I've been a user many, many years ago, but I do believe you have your system dialed in right. Is it called Drive Kansas? The
Yes.
billing, automatic billing, and once we all got on board with use this and not get a paper bill, I think that smoothed itself out. So I'm a big fan of that. And also, many of us were getting calls about getting the toll, you owe the state of Kansas toll money. Those have stopped recently too. Have you been engaged with those fraudulent text messages, which
Yeah.
went along with our K-tags or Drive Kansas?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Really appreciate the question, and actually your comment about K-tags and Drive KS. I don't know if the Turnpike is going to be giving a presentation to the committee, but they would best be able to explain to everybody how that all works. But I will just say from my viewpoint, it's a very common sense solution just to go ahead and get a K-tag, go to Drive KS, get your vehicles registered. It will save you money. If you think you're going to be on the Turnpike, it's cost-free to get the K-tag, and it will save you money down the road. So once again, I'm a huge supporter of that too, and I think it's an efficiency for everybody. To your question about the scams, you're right, they seem to have died down. You know, it was a real issue, and it wasn't just people who had K-tag accounts. It was anybody, and so you know, it is a concern. I would say all of these big systems that we have, where people's information are out there, they're going to be vulnerable to scams like this. We continue to monitor them. We continue to proactively communicate to people that these are scams. We will never. KDOT will never, I'm going to say this officially to everybody, anybody who's listening, KDOT will never send you a text message and ask for money. That's not how we work.
Thank you for your presentation. Great as always. Just to add on to that, Senator Bowers, yes, they turned in those bad actors. Some of them were bad foreign actors that were pulling off the scams. They continue to watch it, but it's an evolving issue. No further business come before the committee. We are adjourned.